Well, hello everybody and welcome to my show. My name is Jason DaCosta. This is Consistent Preterism, aka Common Sensism, aka rolling around in a 3-ton vehicle, cruising and talking about the Bible. Okay? Thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about a little thing called trajectory. Trajectory is such a cool word. You see, for some people, when they are being attacked by demons, they say the name of Jesus and the demons stop. But for guys like me and other IOers, when we're being attacked by wannabe Israelites or myth people with spazzy attitudes, we shout out the word trajectory, and they all stop. They stop dead in their tracks. And the reason why is because trajectory is super important when it comes to understanding the story. When you have an understanding of the story's natural trajectory, it sort of helps understand other sections of the story a lot better. For instance, you'd be shocked to know that hardly anyone in these camps, whether it be Christian, myth, atheist, whatever it is, hardly anyone understands or at least shines enough light upon the fact that there's promises and trajectory all throughout the Old Testament. And they're very specific, right? The promise and the trajectory of the Old Testament, starting with Moses, going right on through. Now, somebody might say, well, what about Adam? What about Noah, right? What about Cain and Abel? Right? That person's obviously from the South because of their accent. But what about Adam? What about Noah? What about Cain and Abel? Right? So that's what they might ask. And it's a good question. But to me, all those early figures stand for is sort of a backstory to the meat and potatoes of the story, and to the ones that the focus should be on, that being Israel, that being the chosen seed. But all these forefathers, we know Noah's a forefather. It says it in the book of Tobit. He was one of Israel's earliest ancestors, says Tobit. And so anyways, all these forefathers sort of set you up for the meat and potatoes of the story, that being Israel. Now, I'm not saying any of this is true. I'm not saying I believe in Adam. I'm not saying I believe in Noah. I'm not saying that I believe that a single thing documented in that book occurred. Now, you may disagree and say it has. I'm not saying it has or it hasn't. Obviously, we know things in the book did happen, wars and different. I'm sorry, I'm getting a call here as I'm driving. I'm hoping that I'm still recording. Let's make sure. Yes. All right. So we obviously know that some things happen, but that's neither here nor there. That's not the point of my audio, and I don't really get into that very much. Oh, was this true or false? Did this happen or didn't it? I sort of lean towards it didn't, because of all the crazy stuff it says. But regardless, there is a trajectory in the story. And the trajectory in the story involves Israel, and it involves their journey, their suffering, their bondage, their sojourning, if you will. And all throughout the story, when you finally get in, 20 pages and you're locked in on Israel for the rest of the way in the Old Testament, it takes a real jackarse to reject that this story is mainly concerned with the people of Israel. All right? We've been sort of told to look at the book and think it means something about us and try to draw meaning out of it and understand how God feels about other people. And right? We don't even know if this is the real God. This could just be another tale, another myth, another tribal deity, for all we know. But anyways, people miss out on this most crucial point because it sets up the trajectory for the end of the story. And that crucial point is that Israel, Abraham's seed, right? This is who Abraham's seed is all throughout the story. Okay, do we not remember the promise that was made to Abraham that his seed would be blessed? His seed would become like the stars of heaven in number. Well, that's Israel. Israel fulfills all those promises. Israel becomes like the stars of heaven in number. Israel is highly blessed and favored. Israel is the bless you, or I'll curse you and curse you type deal. Israel was the chosen people. Israel, my beloved. He was the self-proclaimed God of Israel. And this is all over the Old Testament. So if we see this, and we see this trajectory here, we can see that God's chosen people were Israel. The Bible flat out calls Israel Abraham's seed over and over again. And it kind of puts things into perspective when we get to the New Testament and we see that term Abraham's seed being used again. Now, I know. The Christian world has taught us to think that that means a spiritual descendant by faith. But again, they've missed some crucial foundational points. In Romans 4:1, when Paul says, "What did our father Abraham find according to circumcision?" He's not talking to anyone other than actually Abraham's seed, Abraham's descendants, those scattered to Rome. That's who he's speaking to. If you couldn't tell by the way he said, "What did our father Abraham find?" That was their father. But the point here is that it's not about... See, people look at that passage and they say, well, look, it shows that circumcision availeth nothing. But that's not Paul's point. Paul's point still falls within the confines of the Israel-only context. In other words, Paul was using Abraham, their father, as an example as to why faith was more important. For them, though. Not for us. For them. The story's focused on Israel. You see, that faith that Paul says is more important than circumcision, and he uses the example that Abraham had faith before he was circumcised, that faith was still only for Israel. Remember, Paul says, I think it's Romans 4, maybe 13 or something. I don't know. I'm a little rusty, but I'll give it a go. He says, for the promise wasn't to Abraham and to his seed through the law, but it was through faith. In other words, it wasn't to Abraham or to his seed through the law. It was to his seed through faith. It still doesn't extend beyond the seed. It was to Israel through faith. So when Paul is writing to the Romans and saying, "What did our father Abraham find according to the law?" he's basically saying, Israel, what did your father Abraham find according to the law? He found nothing. He was justified by faith. But it still doesn't defeat or negate the fact that it was Israel exclusive. Plain and simple. And so if we see that there's a host of different reasons to understand what's going on in the New Testament as the regathering of the lost sheep of the house of Israel, I mean, hey, that wouldn't make any sense, right? No. Especially when Jesus says he comes only for them. Especially when Paul says he was born into the law to redeem those under it. Especially when Paul calls the Corinthians flat out descendants of the ones who crossed the Red Sea and were baptized into Moses. Especially when Revelation says that only the 12 tribes of Israel were celebrating redemption in the end. No, I mean, these would all be reasons that nobody should pay any attention to, right? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Why would a mission to seek the sheep be actually a mission to seek Israel? Could it be that the term sheep throughout the Old Testament is used to speak only of Israel? Yes, that's actually true. Go in the Old Testament and find me an instance where anyone other than Israel is called the sheep of God, and I will give you a chocolate donut. Okay, but you won't be getting a chocolate donut because you won't find it. Because Israel is always portrayed as the sheep. And the good shepherd came for his sheep. And the good shepherd said that he would seek them out from wherever they were and he wouldn't lose one. Are you seeing how it comes together very nicely? So back to the trajectory. The trajectory of the story shows Moses promising the Israelites that in the latter days they would be scattered and dispersed, paganized, Gentile to the core. But God would find them, seek them, have mercy upon them, and remember the covenant that he made with Abraham, their father. That's precisely what we see in Galatians, is it not? When Paul says, hey, it doesn't matter if you're Jew or Greek. It doesn't matter if you're slave or free. Right? If you are Christ, it's because you're Abraham's seed. You're an heir according to the promise. Bozo, wake up. Hello. Smell the fresh air. You are one of Abraham's descendants. So you get the golden ticket. You get to tour Willy Wonka's amazing chocolate factory. Okay? That's what this is about, plain and simple. And so I just needed to talk about trajectory for a moment because it really is the word that hoards off all the demons. It really is. Because it kind of stops them dead in their tracks. And like Bob Price the other day, they're kind of like, And I don't think Derek hit him with trajectory. If he hit him with the trajectory, oh boy, I think Bobby would have fell down. He would have been blown off the wall, right? He would have had a great fall. But trajectory is key, especially when we get into I mean, it's everywhere. Any prophet you open, you could literally do the whole, pick a page and point thing in the prophets, and you could find a passage that talks about scattered Israel being saved by their God, or being brought back from the nations, or being sought out by God, or the Spirit being poured out on them. Hello, is anyone there? Is this thing on? No? Okay. So the deets are all there, and by deets I mean details, okay? The deets are all there. Every single prophet talks about Israel coming back from the nations. Ezekiel called Israel the two sticks being brought together, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. Well, Paul talks of two sticks in Romans 11 being joined together. Pardonnez-moi. And it goes on and on and on. Obviously, I wouldn't have a channel with 600 rolling hours of content if it didn't go on and on. But it does go on and on. And the examples are endless. Every prophet looked forward to the day when God would gather his people from the four winds of the earth. And by golly, that's exactly what Jesus commands them to do when he sends them into all nations, to gather his elect. Well, let's talk about the word elect. Who's the elect in the story? Yes. I'm sure it's a shocker, but the elect are the Israelites. My chosen, my elect. Go back, do a word search in the Old Testament, and notice that Israel is the elect, simply meaning the chosen ones. And so when Paul is telling them that they're elect, they're predestined, they were chosen before the foundations of the world, do you think that he's speaking of Israel? Of course he is. Okay, of course he is. This isn't rocket science. Right? This is simple stuff here, folks. Simple stuff. And so the trajectory of these prophets and the trajectory of Moses and the trajectory of the entire story really sets us up perfectly for the New Testament mission to go out and seek the sheep. Now, you may argue that the New Testament is bullshit. You may argue that it's fluff, that it never happened. You may argue that Philo wrote it. You may argue that Auntie Pamela wrote it 1,700 years ago in England. You can take any stance that you want. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to face that it actually says what we IOers are saying it says. There's no way around that. That's never going to change. The case for it's only going to get stronger, and the evidence is overwhelming. It squeezes the life out of you. It hits you with common sense and logic. And then it pulls out the trajectory bow and it shoots an arrow directly into your forehead until you say to yourself, holy cow, he came only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And so the IO viewpoint is very strong. Very strong. And it doesn't matter what the New Testament is. Newsflash, okay? What it is it's a story of Israel being regathered and saved in the end. And every single solitary book lines up with that. Every single one. The Gospels, the book of Acts, the Epistles, the book of Hebrews. Hello, Hebrews. Where it literally says that he only died for the seed of Abraham. Hebrews. And then, of course, the book of Revelation. Literally every single book lines up with that theme. But yet we're told that we're way out of line and that people remain skeptical and that there's no way. Well, I think it's just kind of funny. So, honor the trajectory, folks. And are we not familiar with the esoteric nature of the Bible, specifically the New Testament? Do we really think that the esoteric nature of the New Testament would not allow such an interpretation to be true? I don't think so. I think if we reject that an interpretation like this could be true, we ignore and deny clearly what's going on in the New Testament. Meaning, what did Jesus say? He said that he blinded He blinded the eyes so they could not understand. He said that he only came for a chosen few. He said, many are called, but few are chosen. In other words, there was a remnant that would understand the message. The whole New Testament is esoteric in its nature. And what esoteric means simply is that it's only understood by a chosen few. It's a mysterious mystery of sorts that can only be understood by a chosen few. I mean, it can't get any clearer. It absolutely cannot get any clearer. So, anyways, that's where I'm going to leave it. I wanted to shine some light on the trajectory and how important that is to understand. Because when you hit fools with the trajectory, they bounce back. Okay? Because they have no arguments. Because they realize that the dumb way to do the Bible, the stupid way, the way that everybody's been doing it for so long now, is to come to these New Testament letters and reinvent the wheel. Reinvent the terms. Take Abraham's seed to mean something it never did. Take sheep to mean something it never did. Take elect to mean something it never did. Right? Just act as if everything involves you instead of the original context, whatever that may be, whether it's a Hollywood tale or a true story. Right? That's what people are taught to do. Come on, lady. But the, where was I? This lady almost just pulled out in front of me, so I lost my trajectory. Damn it, I hate when that happens. But what's the more sensible thing to do, folks? Do we take the words for what they meant in the rest of the story, seeing as how it's about pretty much the same people, right? Seeing as how it quotes that old portion of the book some bazillion times, seeing as how it's very much concerned with a lot of the prophets and promises because it mentions them, right? You can argue, again, for fakeness or authenticity, whatever you want to argue, you can argue, but you have to do something with the text. You have to look at what they're actually saying and then try to figure out, why did somebody write this? Then try to figure out, why would somebody compose such a tale? But clearly, you're never getting out from the fact that this is a story about Israel. And you'd do a lot better to just let the story say what it says and follow its natural course, its natural trajectory. And in the end, you see that the God of Israel saved his people. Folks, that's all I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a little like-a-rooski. If you didn't, take a big hike-a-rooski. And we'll catch you on that flip side. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.